So, Monica, is the Harris campaign planning anything different now? Or is it, if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
Well, Chris, they're definitely going to try to ride some of that momentum that you just mentioned. But this week, we are going to see something new from Kamala Harris, and that is some of her policy proposals and places where she may differentiate a little bit from President Biden. Of course, she's going to be appearing with him at an official event in Maryland later in the week, where the two are certain to tout what they view as their major accomplishments in the Biden-Harris administration, and where they're going to be talking about lowering costs for Americans. But you can certainly expect that in the next couple of days, according to the vice president, she's going to roll out the things that she would do if she wins the White House in November. And she's going to be walking this fine line where she's going to say that President Biden was able to achieve some of these things, perhaps, but she's going to say when it comes to the care economy, for instance, that she would like to go further. She's going to raise things like paid family leave. She's going to be talking specifically about pushing that agenda forward and a couple of other items on the economic proposal front as well. And that's critical heading into the Democratic National Convention, according to the people that I've been speaking to who are close to the campaign, because they want to start to lay out some of those ideas. And of course, on this crunch timeline, that's been a little more challenging. And so that's why they're going to be a little bit less campaign mode from both the vice president and Governor Walz this week. They're going to be focusing more on some of that policy perspective, Chris. But you're also going to be seeing the Minnesota governor really doing some fundraising. So he's the one now who's going to take up the mantle for that, at least in the short term, raking in those millions and millions of dollars, according to the operation that they're going to continue to add to, as they also have the task of writing their convention speeches and getting all of that squared away in short order, given that that is now drawing so close. Chris.
Yeah, just listening to her, Julian, you kind of get the reminder that this is a very compressed time period, right? So she's done an awful lot in 3 weeks. She's got a lot to do in the next week or so. But let me ask you this big picture. Do you think this enthusiasm around Harris's campaign has more to do with her? Would any other Democrat following Biden have gotten the same treatment? Or is this the actual opportunity for her to say, here's the reason you're excited about me. Here's what I want to do as president?
Well, Chris, I think it's all of that. I think she's a trailblazer. She has a unique ability, I think, to excite the Democratic base and also cross over and get a lot of those independents and even former Republicans who just can't stand Donald Trump anymore. So she's historic as a candidate. It's also true that these were very odd circumstances, and I think there's an excitement that goes with this fear among Democrats that we were probably heading for a loss in November, to suddenly realizing, hey, we can actually win this thing, and we have a great candidate on our hands who is marshaling resources, who is exciting voters across the board, who is now leading in the polling in these swing states. So it's gone from, I think, a lot of anxiety to a lot of hope and enthusiasm. And that's what you're seeing out there in the number of people, these 10, 15, 20,000 people crowds that are following her. I think it comes at a great moment as we go into the Democratic convention. It probably helps her that this is a 3-month sprint. This is not a year and a half long campaign. I think that's going to end up benefiting Kamala Harris this November.
So, Stuart, what can she do in this week in between? We know she's set to unveil her economic policy. She said over the weekend it's going to bring down costs and strengthen the economy as well. But the devil's in the details, right? How do you make this stuff interesting, exciting, and I think more than anything, convincing?
Well, look, I think when you look at these ideas, and I assume she's going to have an extension of the 100-day plan that the president laid out, these are all very popular ideas, and the contrast with Project 2025 is just extreme. The reason Donald Trump wants to say, that he's never heard of Project 2025 is because this is a bunch of nutty stuff that nobody is really, very few people want to happen. Very few people want to politicize the military. Very few people want to do away with the civil service, plus versus these plans that they're talking about. And, the Biden campaign in 20, and I think now, they've been very good at talking about how this affects people's lives. And I think that's what they're going to focus on. And this is big stuff, They got the Infrastructure Act passed. largest public works project in history. So Trump could undo that, curtail all the money that's coming. They've got insulin prices now, I think $33 a dose. Trump could come in and undo that. So I think a lot of what I would suggest that they be doing is, you like this, it's improving your life, it could be taken away. This is going to be the next stage of it if we pass, if we get elected.
Yeah, and Julian, if you talk about the devil being in the details, in your experience, and you certainly had it out on the campaign trail, how much detail do people really want? And I guess how do you sell something that may, frankly, happen or not happen?
That's a great question, Chris. One of the things that I recognized going to those town halls in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina in the 2020 campaign was that people's ears really perked up when you started talking about solutions. Even if they didn't agree with you all the time, they wanted to hear solutions. And so I do think it's going to pay off for Kamala Harris to put out there her economic plan, her other plans. And she has an advantage, I think, as Stuart said, on these issues. People don't like what's in Project 2025. People are concerned about access to abortion care. They're concerned about their kitchen table issues. And Democrats have a good story to tell on all of that. So I think she's going to have a compelling opportunity here at the convention, especially, where she's going to have tens of millions of people watching, to lay out those plans, to do it in a compelling way, and I think get a significant boost going into the last 2.5 months of the campaign.
Which brings me, Stuart, to tone. Harris has been portraying herself as this joyful warrior. Trump often seems the opposite. He predicts wars and depressions. Here's how the AP puts it. I'm quoting them now. The Trump campaign argues their candidate is reflecting the dour mood of the country. Trump's senior campaign advisors see their candidate as reflecting that reality rather than what they believe is a temporary exuberance igniting the Democratic base after months of discouragement over their ticket. Could they be right?
No, I think that's absolutely insane. So how did Ronald Reagan run against Jimmy Carter? So there was a melee. So the country was in a bad mood. So we did have the hostages. He didn't run. I'm going to, you're in a bad mood, so I'm going to be in a bad mood. He was optimistic. He was positive. We can get out of this. That's how you lead. The most optimistic candidate usually wins in politics and almost always wins in presidential races. People are drawn to that. It's something about it that's uplifting. You want to feel better about yourself, about the country, about the future when you engage in politics and lifting up. And what has been so remarkable about the Trump era, and this is the third time that Donald Trump will have been on the ballot, think about that, is that he demands from you that you feel that America is a failed country, a third world country, uncivilized. And that's just something most Americans don't feel, nor do they want to feel. That's the kind of stuff you say in a bar where I grew up in Mississippi, somebody asks you to step outside. So it's an anti-patriotic campaign that Trump is winning. And I think that they're having real problems with that because it can't change, because this is how Trump sees the world.
Julian, Trump has been complaining about the state of the race, but he doesn't seem to be changing anything. This week, he has just, I think, 2 rallies, one in North Carolina, one that they just announced in Pennsylvania after getting a lot of criticism about it. J.D. Vance is delivering remarks in Michigan on Tuesday. That's it. Is this kind of schedule going to cut it for the campaign?
I don't think so, Chris. I mean, this is probably the most lackadaisical, lazy schedule that we've seen from a presidential campaign at this point in a cycle, and at least in modern history. On the other hand, you have both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz out there barnstorming these battleground states, energizing the base, and also crossing over and getting those independents and light Republicans. So I think that adds up. When you get to November, it makes a difference whether you have people out there talking, doing the word of mouth, getting their neighbors, their coworkers, their family members to go vote. And so it helps when you're doing these rallies. There are a lot of other ways to reach people, for sure. Digital, mail, TV, radio, and so forth, but getting out there still matters. And I think little by little, that's going to add up.